Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. I was going to make some Easter jokes, but that's like, we are risen. It's like,
he's up.
He's up. They thought he was down. He's up. I'm not participating in Easter stuff today. I'm just home, so.
I'm also chilling at home, so here we are.
Honestly, it's kind of nice sometimes. Like, the world's busy. And you're just like, no, I'm going to take a break today. And I'm like, oh, I've got to make sure things, but I'm not doing that today. Take a break.
We just need to chill. And you know what? While you're at home taking a break, you know what you should be doing?
What?
Checking out those amazing deals at our sponsor, InStockTrades.com. You know why, right?
Those prices.
There's a red tag sale, over 50% off books. There's a manga sale right now. Check that out. Like, there's so many sales. There's things going on. Check out all the sales. And then the regular discounts you get are incredible and amazing.
That's right. Up 50% off all the time.
All the time.
Can't beat it.
And, if you're in the States, spend $50 or more free shipping. So last night I was loading up my cart for fun. I didn't order, but I planned to.
I love a little window shop,
Yeah.
I love a little window shop.
And, I should have opened it just now. List. Get those later if you can't get them now. It's great.
I spend a lot of my time, just in general, all the time making wish lists at places. It feels that same need, and it helps me keep track of things I want to read or like. So
I'll load up a cart and come back to it a few days later.
Yeah, and then
like, what do I really want?
I do it, then I wait till I see you, and you're like, do it. And I'm like, okay.
The best.
Yeah.
But you know what? When you spend money there, you're not going to feel bad about it because you know you're getting the best deal. Right. So that's the good news.
Best deal from good people. So we're back with Battle Royale. So was it last month we read it? The month before? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either. Time is weird.
We read it. We read volumes 1 through 3, and we were like, this is something we want to keep reading. It's good.
It has issues.
Also, there are some issues. But we're like, you know what? Let's keep going. So no one can say, because people, there are people out there that are like, they're just too woke and they don't like stuff. First of all, that's a fake word. That's just a fake. Like the people
anyone who throws it out anymore doesn't know what it means.
It doesn't really mean anything. It's just like I heard this. And like, no, we'll read things. Like there's a difference, right? They're seeing the context of time period, right? And how this all comes together. So content warning for people in these books and continued on into this one. There is sexual assault. Either like attempted or committed. Although really they could have done worse with it, which is sad. The bar's low.
It's true.
And there is animal death as well, which I saw that and I'm very much worried about you.
I was very upset.
And of course, like there's just slurs and all over the F slur, everything else, right? So
yeah.
But the time period this came out, I'm not surprised. And also, I don't know what the translators were doing either, because I was thinking about that with this. And I'm very curious if this translations would be the same today or not, because with the Japanese language, like the way that this comes across, it's just very different. Like curse words and things, especially, they're not exactly a 1v1 deal. So I wonder how much people were taking like liberties with the translation here. But I don't have any context for that. So
yeah. Did we determine, like, do you remember what year this was? Was it 80s or 90s?
It was,
or was it like early 2000s? I don't even know.
I feel like it was early 2000s. 1 second. Oh, it must not be. So it has to be a little bit earlier. The original run was 2000 to 2005.
Okay.
Which honestly, early enough for it to be.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I feel like I'm still like, we're probably all still on a headspace. We're like, oh, that doesn't, when you've hit the 2000s, it feels like, well, but then you think
it feels
about
like
the
we're
early
past
2000s.
it.
Yeah, but then you think about the early 2000s and the kind of language we were all using, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh.
I mean, you go back to The Boys, you go back to Invincible even, right? Yeah. A lot of that, you're like, whoa.
Well, even
That's
like
not
I
needed.
mentioned it before, Scott Pilgrim. You know, you're like, oh,
Oh
and you're like, what?
yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot
like
about that.
it's so strange.
Oh yeah, and every movie from the early 2000s does not age well. It's just like consistently you go back, you're like, oh, I want to watch a comedy from the early 2000s. You're like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, like, oh no.
we were not having the same conversations and things I would say at that time period. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. Like, you know,
yeah, I'm
we were
glad.
kids and we were like throwing around words, and it's like not
Thank God
okay,
everything I
but
post on online is just dead. Like those sites don't exist.
yeah,
So,
totally. So yeah,
so,
that adds up. That makes sense.
so in case you guys didn't see it before, we talked about Battle Royale. Battle Royale, in this book is very similar to Hunger Games. I always compare that because it's what we have over here, where the government there takes a class of students, of high school students, and have them battle to the death, and it's televised. But also kind of a way to, like, you know, I guess we'll find out more there, but assume that this is sort of a way to keep the population in check in a way where it's like, hey, we can do this anytime, and it's for your entertainment, and like, don't mess up. So over half of the school, or half of the class is kind of dead now. Think about, and we're still with our kind of like two main groups. We have our main character, and this girl Noriko. I think I'm never gonna remember all their names, and
Oh, yeah.
the guy who has been through this before. So
Who
he had
won
won
last
before,
year. Yeah.
and by unfortunate luck of the draw, ended right back up in the game. And then we have another crew of this like really, really smart guy who I think is going to go crazy.
Yeah.
Who is able to kind of like work on, you know, the machines, electronics, and try to get out of the game that way. So, how do you feel about this next three?
Well, I will say, you know, because we're talking about high schoolers. We've probably mentioned it last time, but like they look so old.
They look very old.
They look so old, which I guess is good because it makes the brutality a little easier to stomach. Maybe, I don't know. It is quite brutal, and you will like see deaths. Like, so heads
Yeah.
up for that too. I mean, you see heads blown off, and
tons of body horror. Yeah.
We mentioned the animal death, so anyone who has problems with that, like me, like let's talk about it. Listen, they're like on a freaking remote island. I didn't think there'd be a little kitten popping up.
I don't know why that was there.
That was not reality.
Nowhere.
Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And I was like, oh no, the moment.
Yeah, she was an interesting character. Like, there were things I liked about her arc and things I didn't like. And one, it felt like they gave her a very similar arc to that guy that was right there at the beginning. Where like he convinces that, like, the main guy, he convinced him, hey, it's okay, you don't have to do this, we can just work together. And he's like, okay, yeah. And then he remembers what he's done because he's killed a guy. And then he freaks out, he's like, never mind. There's no way. I can't go back. And she does a similar thing. So it was kind of it felt unoriginal when he got to that.
Yeah.
And you know, anytime a girl's ugly in this, they're crazy. But I guess if there's a guy ugly in this, they're also crazy.
Yeah.
But I also kind of liked how her death kind of ended up because it felt almost like a Junji Ito-esque deal, weirdly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she's got a lot of acne. She calls herself Pizza Face. She's obsessed with idols. And she keeps talking to this idol in her head, like Junya, who she's obsessed with, obsessed with music. And she's like, oh, I've got to get back to him. And then she's really weird about her pimples. It's really gross. But she ends up getting shot a lot in her face at the end of it. And it does feel kind of like a, you know, a cool wrap up to her. Yeah. She's like so worried about like Pizza Face, and she ends up getting like a lot of holes in her face. But
yeah, it was wild.
Yeah.
It's interesting how they like sprinkle in. Oh, that kitten dies, by the way. I think we've cleared that up.
Oh, yeah, Wicked. Wicked dies. It's very upsetting. So
it's very upsetting.
When you see Pizza Face Girl, just like skip like 5 pages.
His is not okay.
Yeah.
Thankfully it was like a page of seeing it, but
she brings it up a lot.
After that, I was like, well, I'm not gonna see anything worse than that, so we're just gonna keep going, I guess. Yeah, it was a lot. But I kind of like how they've been like sprinkling in. You get to see all the other like classmates, even if you don't really
Yeah.
know them, and you get to experience their arc, even if it's like a little arc like that. To the point even where you're like, oh, this is an interesting character. It'll be cool if this character gets to our main group and like fights against the
Yeah.
game, and then they're dead. So like, you can't really get attached to anyone, which kind of like when The Walking Dead had the big, comeback, when not comeback, but like
Yeah.
revitalized comics in a lot of ways. I feel like it's fair to say,
Yeah.
because it brought back that whole you can't get attached to any character because they're gonna die.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's still pretty, maybe it's more common now, but especially at this time, I feel like that was probably really rare,
Oh yeah.
Because I
Well,
don't know about.
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I also really appreciate that whole like I like that every person gets their due.
Mm-hmm.
And they get honored in that way, which is weirdly nice. So like every time you meet a character, you get to like if they're about to die, unless they're like a really awful mean person, typically you get to see like what their life was like before they got here and like what their
Yeah,
desires were.
you get
And
a
that's really
flashback.
cool. I like to like learn about them and see what their life was like before they got here and what is their motivation. Even if it's weird, it's cool. Like
Yeah.
Takako, I'm glad she got something because I hated what that's just to be like, okay, let's try to do it. Oh, it's all right, attempted sexual assault again. Let's go.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah. She
cool.
was the cool girl, right?
Yeah, she's like, I'm very
Yeah.
cold. Or like people call her like
Like a tough girl or whatever.
robo bitch, what they call her. But like, yeah, she's you could say she's more awkward than cool, really. But they see her as cold and not friendly.
Right. Well, and she, the whole time when we were first introduced to her, she was introduced to the main group and she was about to go with them. She's like, okay,
Yeah.
yes, like this sounds great. And then something happens and she, like, someone's around trying to kill again. She runs away, gets shot.
Yeah.
And that whole arc of her, because they kept bringing her back and they kept mentioning her. And I was like, oh, this is going to be good. She's going to get with them, So it is very unpredictable in that way. Like I didn't predict how her thing ended either.
No.
So I kind of wondered if reality was reality for a little bit there,
Yeah. Because I liked her and I liked that she got some closure there. And I really liked, weirdly, speaking of characters that look so old, I hate to. I'm gonna have to refer the gay pompadour guy.
Yeah.
Who, yeah, apparently, like he outside of school works at like a drag club, which I was not expecting a drag representation at all.
Mm-hmm.
No, granted, he was very stereotypical, but I appreciate that he wasn't evil. Again, the bar is low, but like,
yeah, it is. It is.
He was I recommend there's some videos to watch online about like the evil gay stereotype in like media for decades. But I was really curious about him and like the way that he worked and made money outside of school. It was cool.
And I was also like, how are you in high school? like visually, but also doing those things. It's like, I'm confused.
In Japan at the time, I'm not that surprised.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's still unlikely, but especially in like anime and media, you see a lot of like high schoolers taking more like adult sex work sort of jobs, not necessarily sex itself, but like that type of entertainment industry job, like high school girls taking older men for money or whatever.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
His face, so cool.
His face, though, you're right. His face
is weird.
Oh, his face is so weird, and I'm like, this guy is 1,000% in his 40s. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, and this is also the same time period as like the JoJo's Bizarre Adventures coming out in manga, and all of those high school boys look like they are in their 40s.
Well, and that's the vibe I got the whole time. I'm like, okay, he's got the hair. This is so like a JoJo dude, yeah.
Well, and also, can we talk about how like there's this flashback with Takako and I don't know his name, but the other long-haired guy who knows a lot of martial arts.
Yeah.
When they're kids, this artist cannot draw kids.
Oh my gosh, no.
Pediatric kids. They just have their adult faces on these tinier bodies. It's so bad.
Yeah, the art throughout is like, what are we doing? It's
I just the art is interesting.
yeah.
Sometimes I really like it with certain characters. Other times I'm like, what? What horror book did she get this out of? These characters look terrifying.
Well, even like we think about the hacker guy,
Yeah,
and the shorter dude who's like his friend.
yeah.
That guy, I mean, they couldn't look more different in age. And they're supposed to be the same age. And I know the whole bit is that like this kid's so much shorter and he thought he was younger, etc. But he looks so young.
Yeah, he drew that kid like an actual little baby. And then just
Yeah.
and you got the kid who won last year who looks like a whole man. That's a whole man who's been in the war. He's like,
Yes.
I'm in high school, but I won the game last year. Here's my shaved head.
Well, and then his flashbacks too. I'm like, you lived a whole life. What do you mean you're in high school? Like, I'm so confused.
No idea.
Yeah.
And I'm still enjoying it. I still like I still struggle with just the stereotypes of like female characters in this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's hard because like and I'm leaving it open because I know we'll be introduced to some other characters, and I know we have a female villain in here, which I really like her, but you have these characters that like are they're just there to like be assaulted and then dead, right? And then you have your main girl. It's like, oh, I'm so weak, but thank God I'm here with you and I'll cook for you. I'm like, okay, you let this girl shouldn't live.
That's so funny.
Chicago could run really fast. She's really cool, and this girl who got injured immediately, and he's like, she's so strong, and I feel like she's part of me. I'm like, because you need your like female motivation to make it through this game. And not discounting like the other mixed feelings of there. Like, I do think it's nice to be like, hey, my friend liked her, and so I'm going to protect her. I think that's cool.
Yeah, but yikes, yeah. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Plus, of course, there's very unnecessary underwear shots.
Constantly.
Like, way too much.
Which is,
like as women are dying. I'm like, hey, what are we? This is a lot. I believe I said it before, but this is one of those things like I hope we do continue. I kind of just want to know how it ends at this point,
Yeah.
And I think there's enough like interesting pieces that are making us interested to continue. I don't mean to speak for you, but that's how I feel. And we can talk about the criticisms that it very much deserves. But I look forward to finishing these just to get rid of them because I'm not going to read this again. Like, I look forward to getting.
And I made that cat showed up. I was like, "This is it."
Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to know how it all works out. Because I watched the movie, but I'm sure something's gonna be different. And I like this kind of premise and things. I like this whole like we don't like Squid Game like this, where we don't know who's gonna make it out, and we don't know what the whole purpose is behind the people making this happen. And getting to see how all the relationships of everyone's gonna work out. Because at the end it's gonna be like two people, right?
Yeah.
More than likely.
I'll be curious if like the guy running it, which we didn't see like these whole volumes. I feel like
thank God.
Since the first 3. Yeah, I mean, yikes. But I'll be curious if like he gets the death he deserves. Man,
I hope so.
That's because I'm like, yeah, that's what I want because he's the worst.
Yeah, and I want to see everybody's plans work out because right now they're all. I mean, there's people that are just out there killing, but we have these two main groups where they're trying to figure out how to get out of here, and I'm interested to see how it's going to work. And I'm curious. There's going to be a great betrayal in any of these because, with our tall guy, small guy group, he's trying to get out, but it's almost like an intellectual challenge to him, and not so much anything else. Because we have this really cool moment in there where the little guy loses something that they need, and he's going to have a whole meltdown about it. And his whole monologue is how much he hates this guy. And how upset he is, but it's like, no, I have to be calm because that's how you get projects done, and not necessarily like being calm for this person. So I'm interested to see how that's going to work out. And
for sure. And I think, they mentioned being so sleep deprived that that's becoming a problem, right? Because like little guy, because we don't know their names, little guy, he's like falling asleep on the job. They're trying to do this big mission, and the other guy's like mad at him, but then he's also like, I understand that I'm acting a certain way because I'm also very sleep deprived.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice that at least that group has the self-awareness to understand that, like, yeah, these things would be happening in this situation.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be good. Like, and even we talk about Pompadour guy and everything that happened with him and that whole ending that he had,
which was cool.
Well, yeah, and I was like, oh, okay, like that was also just an interesting twist that like I didn't expect either.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still digging it. I mean, like
we got problems. We don't necessarily recommend it, I feel like, but it's interesting.
But yeah, okay, there's Wikipedia talks about like the English language adaptation, which I was really curious about. The major difference between the Japanese and Tokyo Pop version is that they wrote the BR program as a reality TV show rather than keeping it in tune with the Battle Royale act, which leaves plot holes throughout the manga, especially in volume 15. This can be partially attributed to the fact that when Tokyo Pop released volume 1, the Japanese version was only up to volume 9 at that point. Therefore, they would not have enough ample material to prove that their rewrite would backfire. And so they gave him a lot of like leeway to do that. And he said, so the translator said, what he does, he goes in and makes the bad scenes that much worse. He loved the movie and he also loved the manga. And he knew that he couldn't get away with doing a straight translation because it would make it horrifyingly bad. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And so they hired a writer to help compensate for like how it would be a tough sell because of this extreme content.
Yeah. That's interesting, especially the note about volume 15, which is the last volume. So I'm kind of like, are we going to get to the end and be mad that there are like these big plot holes, I guess?
Yeah. Man, I'm really, I'll see if I can find a good video that goes through the translation because I'm very curious about it. Oh, and apparently, Suzanne Collins had never heard of the book until her book was turned in. But I remember when this came out, when her book came out, and everyone online was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Because even like taking off, like in this island, there are certain areas that become danger zones they can no longer be in. Which also happens in the Hunger Games. So you know, make people kind of close in.
Do we believe that though?
I mean, who knows, really? It does feel very similar.
Yeah.
In concept.
Interesting.
But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody was just writing this stuff. I had no idea. But
I mean, people have the same ideas often, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Happens. Yeah. So we've got. So we're about halfway through. So we have like half more to go.
Yeah.
It is confirmed that the show Squid Game was influenced by the manga version of Battle Royale.
Interesting.
Which we'll get Squid Game again soon. I mean, before too long, so.
I really look forward to that, yeah.
Oh, I'm so ready. So ready.
Wait, like, do we have a date for that?
I know it's this year. I've got to know what's going to happen. They just say late 2024. So okay. I bet like winter. I'm so ready though. I don't even know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, in that ending, it's like, okay. This is going to get wild. I really look forward to that.
Watch the reality shows enough to be like, okay, this will hold me over a little bit.
I need to do that. Maybe I'll do that after this.
It's great to have on, honestly. Yeah. Like it does. They do a good job of like you getting attached to people that are playing in the game and like. But it's gotta be weird because like when they do the jumping game where you fall through.
Yeah.
they have to do all this like resetting between all of these, like
Oh.
to reset the shot and everything.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
have to be
'cause
up
that
there
makes sense.
forever. It takes off like the excitement of like you jump and then somebody else jumps, right? Because you're just like
Right.
you have to stop each time. But
That always looked like probably the most terrifying one to me. Like, yikes.
I know. All right, well, that's what I got.
We did it.
Did it. Happy Easter. Read Power.
If you want some brutality on your Easter, I guess pick this up.
Yeah.
Knowing it's also yikes.
Hope the Easter Bunny brought you candy. I hope the Easter Bunny brings me candy.
Yeah, if the bunny didn't, you get it tomorrow, half off. So there you go.
All right, well, we'll see you guys next Sunday, probably.
Yeah.
With our hauls and reads, and then we'll decide what we're gonna do for the month then.
Sounds good to me. Check out our great sponsor, InStockTrades.com. Treat yourself on this Easter.
Treat yourself.